I am successful. I look for and find opportunities where others see nothing. I am a lifetime learner. I am solution focused. I see only solutions. I am a solution. Welcome to the Be Transformed podcast with me, the catalyst, Dr. Lanre Olusola. Now, this is your go-to space for practical, mind-transforming conversations that empower you to overcome life's biggest challenges. So whether you're struggling with depression, fear, anxiety, worry, the imposter syndrome, whether you're having challenges in your relationships, your finances, or whether you're struggling in your career, in your performance, in your productivity, in your organization, or in your business, together today, we're going to work to transform your mind, to transform your life, to transform your career, to transform your finances, and ultimately to transform your world. Today, we're diving into the topic, the secrets of well-being and longevity. And I'm joined today by David Pickard Wyllie. Now, David is a great and phenomenal mind. I had the rare privilege of meeting David and spending time with him and his lovely wife, who is a phenomenal cook, last year when I went away to South Africa. And, interestingly, David lives far away in the woods. Now, this will interest you. Now, David is not an architect. He's not an engineer. He's not a contractor. He's never built a house before in his life. But guess what? He single-handedly built his incredible, beautiful home with his own hands. And he learned how to build as he started building. Now, David is a global leader. He's an exceptional performance education expert. He blends human potential, business, strategy with universal principles to inspire transformation. Now, he's got over 5 decades of experience. So today, we're tapping into David's 5 decades, 50 years of experience training professionals and executives across the world. He founded the TAG concept of exceptional performance, and he's used it to guide top executives and top entrepreneurs to align with their natural abilities to succeed. David's insights on self-realization, wealth creation, and personal growth make him a transformative thought leader. Welcome to my podcast, David. How are you today?
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm as great as I am. I wake up every morning just saying, thank God I woke up this morning.
Fantastic.
Day to go and learn something new, incredible.
Wow, listeners, you heard it. At 80, he's grateful and thankful for waking up and learning something new. So listeners, this is not just a podcast. This is a platform that transforms your life and turns you into a lifelong learner. So let's dive into it. Now, David, in the last 10 years, I've taken some time to study the world's most successful people, and I've teased out 50 of their fundamental secrets and principles. And so, David, I want you to, having gone through those 50 principles, I want you to pick out maybe between 5 to 7 that resonate with you, and why do they resonate with you? And which of those principles have you used to work with top executives and leaders across the world? Quick one in about 5 to 7 minutes.
All right. Well, back in my early days when I was busy escaping from poverty, I got involved in an American marketing organization, and I was had goal setting jammed down my throat until it was coming out my ears. And I followed the rules, dressed in a way that I actually couldn't afford to, with the gold watch and the whole trip. And I drove a motor car that I couldn't afford to. And my lifestyle was all this great, impressive, big American dream. And then one day I bumped into a saying from Pythagoras: know thyself and you will know the universe and God. And my world flipped on its head. I realized I was actually doing it all wrong. I was doing the popular thing in the motivational industry. I wasn't ever getting to know myself. So to me, that has become the key of my life. I never ever go to bed anymore without asking my soul what I missed today that is important for my reason for being on earth. not my logical reason for being on earth, my soul's purpose for being on earth, because
This
we've
is
all
so
been
profound.
programmed to become consumers, all right? And all our social programming is about consuming, 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 and giving away who we are to authority figures. You don't know what's best for you, listen to your school teacher. You don't know what's best for you, listen to your professor at university. I mean, how I'm talking to a doctor, I've got a standard 8, a grade 10, and I never went back to school. We've got two different places that we're looking at the world from. I don't think they're very important places. And there's place for both of them in the world. Obviously, we need to have goals. Obviously. Goal is simply a destination. When you came to see me, you set a goal to come to South Africa. It was basic. It
Yeah.
was that simple. It wasn't about having stuff. When the label on your shirt is defining who you are, and the label's on the outside of your shirt, not on the inside, then your identity has no integrity, which is another one of the principles that we should be talking about. Because what you're doing is you playing the integrity game through consumerism. Instead of saying, what did my soul choose to send me to earth for? Right? When
So
I
this
get
is what
that
I hear. This is what I hear, David. This is what I hear, David. You talked about knowing thyself. You've talked about identity. You've talked about integrity. You've talked about intuition, the ability to tap into your inner self and have conversations with your inner self and tap into the wisdom that comes from within, from your soul, and seeking purpose, not from outside, not from acquiring things or having things, but seeking meaning from deep within you. Wow, this is so profound. And I think one of the most profound things that you said is, every night checking in and every morning checking in, to ask, what have I missed? Checking in to ask, what else could I have learned? Asking yourself, what wisdom could I have taken away from this experience? Wow, this is so deep. This is so deep. Thank you very much for that, David. Now, I've got a next question for you, right? And I want you to tell us, right, from your own experience, you built your own house with your own hands, right?
Yes.
And you'd never built before. How
But
long
I
did it
need to
take? What?
give some credit to the two guys who worked with me, who I stole off a building site, who knew how to mix cement, because I didn't know how to mix cement.
So
And
why
they
did you do it?
actually, when we started, they laughed at me because they thought this crazy man is going to build a house. He doesn't even know how to mix cement. But what you can see behind me is just a little piece of a 2,000 square meter home. All right.
I mean, I was blown away. I was
It
blown
took
away.
me
Why did you decide to build? It
it
took you
took
how
me
long?
20 years to build it. Very often I was stuck because I didn't know what next to do. So I waited until I felt that I was ready. And then when I started doing it, I realized I could have done it straight away. It was my own perception of me that was in the way. It wasn't skill. All
It
right.
was
And
your perception of you.
looking back at our lives, what's the only limiting factor? Every religion in the world says we create in the image of God. They've got different ways of saying it, but in principle, they say science says we are a holographic piece of the universe. All right, they're basically saying exactly the same thing. One is leaving religion out of it, and the other one is centering it around religion. But what does that mean? It means that as a holographic piece, I have all the knowledge of creation at my disposal. I am part of it. And the only limiting factor is all the dogma that I've allowed to be true. It has got nothing to do with knowing myself. Knowing myself isn't knowing what my parents told me I am, or what my school teacher told me I am, or what a bunch of drunken friends in a pub are telling me I am. That's not me. That's the false persona. All right. One of the most profound things that I think ever happened to me, and I was tiny, it was somewhere between the age of about 2 and going to school. I honestly can't remember where exactly. I was leaning against a tree in a place that I would have got a hiding for going to one day. And there were a lot of places that I would have got hidings for if my parents would have known I'd gone. And I heard the voice inside my head. I thought it was the tree talking to me. It might have been, I don't know. Say, your job here is not to become like your parents, but to overcome who your parents are and add to evolution. I never forgot. I went home and I told my parents that tree spoke to me. And the first thing that happened is I was told, shut up and never tell anybody or you'll end up in a funny farm. So I shut up, but I never stopped listening. And that voice comes to me. It's not, I don't know whether it's trees. I don't know whether it's my inner being. I don't know whether I'm channeling knowledge from some other place anywhere. Quite honestly, I don't care. The one thing I have learned is that my intuition is on my side and it has never, ever let me down.
Yes, yes. Your intuition is on
That's
your
what I
side.
teach people.
Your intuition is on your side and it has never, ever let you down. It is not in the business of letting you down. It's in the business of serving you. Wow. I love that. I love that. So David, why do you live far away in the woods?
Because there's no way in the world that I want to live in a place that the vast majority of people call society. It's really quite simple. If I want to find out who I am, I go to a place where human indoctrination has never put its footprint. Because you see, there's a massive difference between our indoctrination, all our social conditioning, which is designed to teach us to fit into a system, and our divine nature. Now, let me pose just a quick question to everybody. Okay, we all know that we have unique DNA. Why would the Creator have given us unique DNA if our purpose in life was to give it away to conformity?
Why would God give us a unique DNA, unique, different DNA and now we are struggling to conform with everybody else? We're supposed to be outstanding. We're supposed to be unique. We're supposed to stand out. We're supposed to be different. But we're constantly reshaping ourselves to conform. Very, very interesting.
Now we have the choice. No, we have the choice of shaping ourselves to fit in or shaping ourselves to stand up. Now, no evolution has ever taken place from the people who fitted in. The evolution has always taken place from the people who stood out.
Greatness is about standing out. Greatness is about having the courage and the boldness to be your authentic self and to stand out. Wow.
Let me just ask you a simple question. What manual did the Wright brothers study to learn to fly? None. They listened to something inside them that was giving them wings. Steve Jobs did exactly the same thing when he said one day we will have computers that only have an on-off button. Everything else just happens on the screen. IBM and all the great big computer companies of the time laughed at him. I wouldn't even give him a job. He changed the world. His uniqueness wasn't an ego trip. It was a service to humanity. And the more I develop my uniqueness, the more I have something to serve with that no one else has ever had.
This is so profound, David. This is so profound. Now, you developed the TAG concept of exceptional performance. What is that? The TAG concept of exceptional performance.
It stands for think, act, and grow. Now,
if you act and grow.
Yeah. Now, if you look at the very first premise, think. What we call education is not thinking. It is being programmed. All right, you show me the book that teaches you how to live in the future.
A book that teaches you how to live in the future.
That book has never been written. How do you run a university degree on how to live in the future? You can't. Someone has to be a pioneer that goes to the place that no one has ever been to before. Right? And in the context of my lack of education and my family, my basic upbringing, I have gone to a place that no one has ever been to before.
Where is that?
Yeah, I'm badly dyslexic, very badly dyslexic. That's why I never read the thing that you sent me. You sent me 50 pages of stuff. I don't think I've read 50 pages in the last 40 years. All right. But I listen and I observe. And I've learned from listening and observing and having the courage to step into the unknown and realizing that the journey will teach you how to make it if you have the guts to start the journey. And any job will teach you how to do it if you have the guts to start the job.
It's about starting, right? And making that commitment to get started.
Okay, none of us who run our own businesses successfully are real entrepreneurs. Had anyone to teach us. Everything that the real entrepreneurs, you get two kinds of entrepreneurs. You get the groundbreakers, the Steve Jobs, the Wright brothers, we can go on and on and on and on. Okay. And then you get the entrepreneurs who follow along the safe path. If someone else was a pioneer. The people who create the path are probably 1 in every 10,000. Then you probably get 500 or 600 people who have the guts to walk along the path. And everyone else is just looking for a job. And what we call education is teaching us to look for a job. Obviously, our school teachers don't know how to be self-employed, or they wouldn't be school teachers living on the pittance.
True talk.
How does anyone who's never left school prepare you to leave school? They can prepare you to be a mathematician. They can prepare you to teach geography or whatever it is that the system that you're in is teaching you. But almost none of them have ever done it. How many engineers or architects have you ever met who actually built something to qualify? They qualified about the subject. They never did anything other than be an academic.
Think, act, and grow. Think,
all right. So
act,
the thinking is
grow.
the first part. I've got to make up my mind what I want. And I can make up my mind whether what I want is conformity. I can wake up with a headache one day and I say, oh my God, I'm a terribly sick person. I always have headaches and I always have migraines. And then I rush off to the doctor and the doctor says, well, tell me about your parents. You tell them and they say, oh, well, your mother died of cancer, so you've got cancer genes in your body. And you can immediately turn around and say, well, I am potentially all the things my parents were. Or I can turn around and say, I am none of the things my parents were. They were the perfect starting point for me learning to overcome all of that. All right. I know this is sort of like off the topic, but it's an absolutely amazing story that illustrates this principle. Years ago, a client of mine who ran a hugely successful business in this country phoned me about 3 or 4 days before one of my big workshops. And he said, listen, I've just found out that a guy who works for me has been diagnosed with AIDS, and the medical profession have told him he's got 2 weeks left to live. Please, can I send him on your workshop? I know it's hell of a short notice, but please, can I send him? Because I want him to die in peace and integrity. I said, with pleasure. And for the first time in his life, he actually stood up on the workshop and he said to people, he said, I'm happily married, but I have a boyfriend lover as well. Okay. My wife has given me an amazing baby daughter, and I only have one real regret. And that is that I have just been told that I'm dying of AIDS and I'll be dead in 2 weeks. And I'll never see my daughter grow up. And let's just say the guy's name was Brian, just to use the name, it doesn't matter. Okay, I said to him, Brian, why do you believe you won't see your daughter grow? And he looked at me like I was crazy, and I absolutely understand why. He said, haven't you heard a thing I said? I said, I've heard everything you said. I said, but what if you could see her grow up? What would you want? He said, my real regret is that I will never be able to give her his 13th birthday. I said, Brian, let's change the program. Why don't you spend some time imagining how incredible it would be to give her her 13th birthday? Plan it in great detail. Feel all the emotion of the plan. All right. He looked at me like I was crazy. And I said to him, Brian, what have you got to lose? You're going to be dead in 2 weeks. Why don't you have some fun while you die? And he sort of smiled and he carried on with the workshop. And 3 days after he came off the workshop, I got a phone call from his boss. It was one of my clients anyway. He said, what did you do to this guy? I said, why? He said, he doesn't even look as if he's sick. Okay, so now to cut a very, very long story short, 8 years later, he gave his daughter her 13th birthday. 2 weeks later, he died in hospice of AIDS that he hadn't had for the past 8 years.
Wow. By just changing his imagination, by just imagining, by just painting a new picture of his desired future, till the 13th birthday of his daughter, he lived long. He extended the 2 weeks prognosis for another 8 years. And then he died 2 weeks after. Wow.
Because
that is profound.
When his goal had been completed, he let the old tape play again. So he put his life on hold, and then he did exactly what the medical profession told him for the last 2 weeks of his life. And you know what? That was my fault. Lanre, that was my fault. Because if I had have told him to go to your daughter's wedding and then to plan a trip to Mauritius with your grandchildren to teach them how to fish, he would have still been alive.
This is powerful. This is powerful. This is so
this
powerful.
This has got nothing to do with health. It's got nothing to do with health. It has everything to do with using our consciousness as a divine being.
I want us to talk a bit about this.
Whether we're making money, or we're making ourselves healthy, or we're giving ourselves back dignity and self-respect, it's totally academic.
And this is the wealth of wisdom that we want to tap from you, David. Also, in case you don't know, David is 80 years old, yeah? And he's looking very well, looking very strong. Now you know that it's mind and soul over matter and body. So, David, what are the secrets from your experience? I mean, you've told us one powerful secret, the ability to use your consciousness and your imagination to change and alter your experience, right? What are the other, if you could tell us two more secrets of well-being, of good health, of longevity, of changing your life's experience, what would they be?
All right, the first thing we need to do is understand you keep using the word consciousness. Consciousness, only a tiny piece of consciousness is the way we think. The rest of it is the way we feel about because we think. And if you come back to the word emotion, the word means to put into motion. So thinking becomes the steering wheel of our life, where we are choosing goals. We are giving ourselves a destination, doesn't matter what that destination is. And it's the way we feel about ourselves and the excitement that we develop in us because of what we're planning for our lives. That is the petrol in the motor. It's taking us forward. So consciousness is every single aspect of our lives working in perfect harmony for, at any one time, one common cause. I stopped teaching goal setting, conventional goal setting, years ago. I completely stopped setting because I had been there buying the new Mercedes that you can't afford. And, most people buy a motor car, the old consumerism thing, fly now, pay later. And the whole economy of every nation in the world is actually built on debt. And the interesting thing about that debt is the banks don't have any money. Everything that they lend you is only a book entry. but they ask you for tangible assets as collateral for the book entry. Have you ever read your bank account contract?
No.
No one ever reads it. It's about 20 pages. Who's going to read it? You just need a bank account, so you sign. Well, there's a clause in every bank account contract that I've ever read from all over the world that says, on opening this bank account, you agree to cede everything, including whatever you put in the safe deposit box, to the bank.
Ooh.
And then they graciously lend you your money that you've now donated to them. The money system. And when I'm running my wealth builder workshop, because you asked me about one of the principles of wealth and wealth creation, that's hugely important. The first thing I'll say to people is, if you don't know the game, you're never going to play the game properly. Imagine thinking you're playing soccer and you walk onto a rugby field. Man, you are going to get sore. And debt is making you sore. If you understand the game, you can live debt-free for the rest of your life. There's only one reason in the world to borrow money. And that's because the total reimbursement of that money that you borrowed was nothing compared to the profit that you made because you did it. The moment you buy something that you think you need to fit into society or whatever the case may be, that is a liability, not an asset. You're playing the game to get hurt. Almost all people retire in poverty. They don't retire in wealth. Have you ever seen anyone who can retire on his pension plan? Well, you can if you really lower your standard of living. This beautiful property that you know about that I've got here, I built for cash. When I didn't have the cash, I just waited until I got some more.
And
I used three base principles. I used three base principles in that wealth creation. One was I need to generate some money because there's some things that you need money for. Like you can't, the origin of money is the gratification of a barter system that got very clumsy.
Yeah.
I can't take my herd of oxen into a clothing shop to buy myself a new Savile Row suit. All right. So the banking system put something in its place. We call it money. But it's nothing. I mean, what makes a South African rand a different price from one South African rand? What makes it more valuable than $100 US bill? They're both pieces of paper and they're about the same size. In fact, the $100 bill has got really lousy artwork on it, and the South African rand is quite a good piece of art. But the perception amongst people of the value of both of those pieces of paper is vast, and wealth is about perception. So I taught people that they need to generate money as in currency for things they cannot barter for. Then they need to be able to barter for all the other things that they want. 3/4 of this house never cost me anything. Or did I say never cost me anything? I'd go to a cement company and I'd say, you want me to train 30 of your staff? I want a couple of pallet loads of cement in exchange. Now, I didn't earn any money, so I had no tax liabilities. They wrote it off as wasted. So both of us scored 100% and I built a house.
Wow. So it was exchange of value.
Yeah, I used that principle, exchanging value. And then the other principle that I use in wealth creation was that you give without ever having acknowledgement that you gave.
Give without ever acknowledging that you gave.
Without ever having it or receiving acknowledgement. Because, you see celebrities, they write a $5,000 check and then they denote it to some charity. But they have the check printed this size. And then they filmed and it goes on national TV and everything. Well, the ego got paid. And they were probably so wealthy that it didn't cost them what it would cost you to buy a steak. Because if a guy's a billionaire and he writes a check for 5,000 rand, he hasn't even given a waiter a tip in a restaurant. All right? Am I making sense? So it's an ego trip. But you see, the universe has to keep the scales of life balanced. We've got the universe keeping the balance. paying us in ways that we never dreamt we would be. And we
Wow.
have a little bit of money that we need to do the money things like fill your car with petrol, okay, because the petrol attendant isn't going to barter with you, etc., etc. So you balance wealth creation. But
Wow.
wealth
Wow.
also, okay, sorry?
So we've talked about wealth, we've talked about productivity, we've talked about life. I want us to hone in on wellness and longevity in the 10 minutes that we have left. So if we're taking all of these fundamental principles that we're using to create wealth, that we're using to manifest different things, you talked about thinking, you talked about imagination, you talked about feeling, you talked about harmony, you talked about wholeness, you talked about, changing perceptions, and service to humanity and creating value to humanity. So what are those three fundamental habits or routines or practices that you believe we need and are essential to wellness and longevity?
Firstly, we've got to come back to, am I fully in integrity knowing myself? If I get that right and I'm true to my soul, I'm going to be living in integrity in the broad concept of integrity, not selective integrity. Or then I have to turn around and I have to create in my imagination the visualization of a place that is greater than the place I currently am living at. Whether it's in money, whether it's in health, it's academic. Principles of creation apply to all creation. So if I want to create a healthy life, I have to apply the principles to health. If I want to create financial wealth, I have to apply the principles to creating finance. So the principles never change. The principles of the universe are the creative power of God.
Use it for everything. You use it for everything. Integrity,
Absolutely.
knowing yourself.
We know ourselves, we've got to be creative, we've got to live in integrity to our sole purpose on this planet. Because we didn't come here to be a consumer.
We came to give.
Yeah, we came to serve. But the only tool we have to serve is who we have made of ourselves. So if I doubt my own ability, which I spoke about when we started talking about the building, if I doubt my own ability, no matter what it is, whether it's to heal myself or whether to supply a great service or anything, if I'm carrying feelings of inferiority for any reason at all, and inferiority relative to what I want out of life, then that is the ceiling above my head. I can't do anything else. When I understand that God would never have those inflictions or afflictions, because God doesn't think of himself as limited, and I'm a holographic piece. The universe isn't limited. As far as we know, it's infinite. And talking about that, as far as I know, we can never die. Life is an eternity. There's your longevity. All right.
So
Let me ask you a simple question.
From an eternity perspective.
Yeah. Okay. This is a classroom in eternity. How many of your audience would like to stay in grade 3 for the rest of time?
I certainly won't.
Think about this logically. Because you don't know what life is going to give you after you've left school, is that a reason to work out how to stay at school? No, we don't know what life is going to give us when we take this suit of clothes off that we call our body and change dimensions. So we spend our time, longevity, trying to work out how to stay here, even if we're a geriatric old cripple who's dependent on someone else for our survival, with no quality of life, simply because we're too afraid to leave school.
I love this. I love this. Your perception about eternity is the key to longevity. Life is a classroom in eternity, and you must serve your true self through purpose, through creativity, through imagining a greater place than your reality, through imagining being a greater person than who you are, through imagining a greater health than you have, and being true to yourself and showing the highest dimension of integrity to self. Wow. Thank you very much, David. Wow. We've got 3 more minutes. And in those 3 minutes, I'd like us to quickly go through a few things, right? So, David, you're 80 years old. What are the 2 things that drive you for life?
Firstly, I'm still got a bucket list that I'd have to live to be about 10,000 to fulfill. So I'm going to die doing something, not die lying around like an old geriatric waiting to die. It's that simple. I'm going to live till my last possible minute. What I've always told my students is I'm going to run the best course I've ever run in my life, go home, lie on my bed, go to sleep, and change dimensions. Irrespective of how old I am. It doesn't matter if I do it tomorrow or if I do it in 10 years' time. It's that I can look my creator square in the eyes and say, with the time at my disposal, I gave it my best shot. Never held back once.
I like that. Giving it your best shot every day and living each day as if it was your last. No. David, how powerful is this combination? Your imagination, your thoughts, your beliefs, and your feelings. How powerful is that combination?
That combination is your divine power. How powerful do you conceive divinity to be?
Wow.
With that put to work, and you've got to understand that we can use it against us because we can keep saying, well, I didn't finish school, so I've got to be an artisan. Or you can do what I did and say, well, I didn't finish school, so I was never indoctrinated. So I'll teach doctors how to free themselves from their indoctrination.
Wow.
It's a choice. Understand the principle. I'm not bragging. I'm saying understand the principle. We can lock ourselves into an historical point of view, or we can dream a dream that is so big it scares the hell out of us, and understand that the work will teach us how to do it, provided we're prepared to start the job.
Powerful, powerful. Release your divine power by activating your imagination, your thoughts, your beliefs, and your feelings. Wow, this is profound. This is phenomenal. Now, David,
you've got to use that, Lanre, you've got to use that to reach up for more. The universe is expanding. So more is the God law of our life.
Stretch yourself.
Not contentment.
Push yourself.
I call it divine discontentment. I'm absolutely grateful for every aspect of my life and what it's taught me. But I'm driven by the divine discontentment that my soul knows I can do more.
Love that. Stretch yourself, push yourself, disrupt yourself, activate divine discontentment. So, David, when I was with you, you told me a story about a research that was done about children that play with imaginary friends. I want us to end with that story. What did they find out about children that have imaginary friends? End this podcast with that story. I think it's important for people to hear that.
The first thing they did is they hypnotized a child that had an imaginary friend, and they found out everything they could about the child's imaginary friend, where that friend was living, etc., etc., etc. Then what they did is they went, let's say that I had the imaginary friend. The friend I was playing with was living in Berlin. They would then go to Berlin and do the research and see if they could find the friend on all the information. Without exception, they found the friend. And when they found the friend, they found that their friend had a friend in South Africa who happened to be me. That is how powerful we are. Now, that's the same concept as the military uses today to teach people things like remote viewing, which I've been teaching for 50 years. Remote viewing is the understanding that I am omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient as a being, In other words, I am everywhere when I have every potential inside myself already. And wherever I focus my awareness, I will be. So I can learn to focus my awareness into the past, into the future, into the present, in another location, and use all my senses there as if it was here now.
Thank you very much, David. This has been a most profound conversation. Wow. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing from your wealth of experience, your wealth of wisdom. David is over 80 years old. I want to thank you also, listeners, for joining us on the Be Transformed Tribe. You know, it's important that we remember that transformation begins with our imagination. You've heard David say it's about your imagination, it's about your perceptions, it's about your feelings, it's about your beliefs. If you found great value in our conversation with David today, make sure you don't keep this to yourself. Make sure you share it. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube. Make sure you catch the audio on Spotify and Apple or wherever you like to listen to the podcast. And together, let's go out there and transform lives, one mind at a time. Shalom. Thank you very much.
I am successful. I look for and find opportunities where others see nothing. I am a lifetime learner. I am solution focused. I see only solutions. I am a solution.